Professor Alan Wright stood at the front of the Academy Hall and waited. The room was larger than any classroom on Earth. The ceiling curved high above, glowing softly like a calm sky. Long rows of seats floated in gentle arcs, each one shaped to fit a different kind of body. Some seats were wide and low, others tall and narrow. A few hovered on soft light instead of touching the floor. Students from many worlds slowly took their places, their movements careful and curious. Alan kept his hands folded behind his back. He had been told not to pace. Human pacing made some species nervous. Beside him stood Dr. Sarah Cole. She looked calm as always, but Alan knew her well enough to notice the tightness in her jaw. She wore the dark blue coat of an academy supervisor, the symbol stitched clearly on her shoulder. Her role today was not to teach. Her role was to watch, both the class and him. Above them, a large display floated in the air. The letters were clear and sharp, translated automatically into every known language. Human history, restricted study. A low wave of sound moved through the hall. Not voices exactly, but the shared reaction of many minds processing the same strange idea. Alan let it happen. The silence after confusion was always useful. Most students assumed it was an error. A few glanced around, checking if they were in the wrong hall. Others adjusted their data slates, clearly expecting the title to change. One group whispered to each other, their skin colors shifting in mild amusement. Human history was old, messy, and mostly irrelevant to galactic progress. Everyone knew that. Sarah tapped a small control on her wrist. The doors sealed with a soft tone. That got their attention. Alan stepped forward. "Good morning," he said, speaking slowly and clearly. "You are all in the correct place." The noise faded. Eyes, lenses, and other sensory organs turned toward him. "My name is Alan Wright. I am a human historian, certified by the Interstellar Council and approved by this academy." He paused, letting the translation systems catch up. "This course exists," he continued, "because many of you asked a simple question." The display shifted. A single sentence appeared. "How did humans survive long enough to matter?" A few students leaned forward. Others stiffened. Alan smiled slightly. He had seen this reaction before. "By most galactic standards," he said, "humans should not exist." Sarah shifted her weight but said nothing. Alan gestured and the image changed again. A rough, blue and green sphere filled the air above them. Earth, seen from space but not the clean, peaceful image most were used to. Storms covered the surface. Fault lines glowed faintly. Data scrolled along the edges. "This was our home," Alan said. "It was unstable. Loud. Dangerous." A student in the front row raised a limb. It was thin and jointed, moving carefully. "If the environment was so hostile," the student asked, "why did your species not relocate?" Alan nodded as if he had been waiting for that. "We couldn't," he said simply. The student blinked. "Why not?" "Because we had no ships," Alan replied. "No allies. No advanced warnings. No external support." The hall grew quiet again. Sarah stepped forward just enough to be seen. "For context," she said calmly, "most member species reached planetary stability before developing space travel. Humans did not." Alan continued. "Earth changed constantly. Weather killed us. Animals killed us. Illness killed us. Sometimes we killed each other." The display showed early human settlements. Small. Fragile. Temporary. "To many of you," Alan said, "this looks like a failure." He let the image stay. "For us," he said, "it was normal." A student near the back shifted, their seat pulsing softly. "Why was this allowed to continue?" the student asked. "Why did your governing systems not intervene sooner?" Alan looked at Sarah for half a second. She gave a small nod. "We didn't have global governing systems," Alan said. "Not at first. We had tribes. Later nations. Often they disagreed." "That seems inefficient," the student replied. Alan almost laughed but stopped himself. "It was," he said. "It still is, sometimes." The display changed again. Time moved faster. Centuries passed in seconds. Cities rose. Cities fell. Borders shifted. Tools improved. Mistakes repeated. "Human history," Alan said, "is not a straight line." Several students watched closely now. This was not how most species described their past. Their records were clean. Ordered. Logical. "We learned by failing," Alan continued. "Often the same way more than once." Sarah cleared her throat softly. "Professor Wright," she said, "remember the pacing." Alan nodded. "Of course." He slowed the progression of images. There is a reason this course requires supervision, he said. Some species find early human history upsetting. A student in the center raised their hand. Define upsetting. Alan considered his words carefully. Human history, he said, forces a question many civilizations prefer not to ask. The display showed a simple comparison. 2 timelines. One smooth and steady. The other jagged and broken. The question is this, Alan said. If comfort creates progress, why did humans progress fastest when we were uncomfortable? The room felt different now. Not tense but alert. Sarah watched the students closely. Her wrist display showed stable readings but she stayed ready. Alan moved his hands slowly, open and visible. This course is restricted, he said, not because humans are violent. The display paused. And not because humans are superior. Another pause. It is restricted, he said, because human history shows that survival does not require perfection. A student near the side spoke quietly. It shows that survival requires suffering. Alan nodded once. Yes. The word hung in the air longer than expected. Suffering did not make us wise, Alan said. It made us stubborn. The display dimmed slightly, shifting to a calmer view of Earth at dawn. We adapted, he said. Sometimes too slowly. Sometimes too late. But we adapted. Sarah stepped closer to him now. This is the point, she said to the class, where previous sessions have required intervention. Several students looked surprised. Alan glanced at her, then back at the hall. You are not here to admire humanity, he said. And you are not here to judge it. He took a breath. You are here, he said, to understand why no one teaches this subject lightly. The bell tone sounded softly, marking the end of the session segment. The doors remained closed. No one stood up. Alan allowed himself a small, tired smile. Part 1 always went this way. Alan waited until the room settled again before continuing. The display above shifted, showing Earth long before cities and satellites. The colors were rough and uneven. Thick clouds rolled over wide oceans. Land was broken by mountains, deserts, and ice. This, Alan said, is where we began. He spoke slowly, keeping his voice steady. Earth was never gentle. Storms formed without warning. The ground shook. The climate changed again and again. The image zoomed in. Small human groups appeared, tiny marks against vast land. We had no shields, Alan continued. No climate control. No safe zones. When the world became cold, we wrapped ourselves in animal skin. When it became hot, we learned to move and wait. A soft sound came from the students. Not fear. Not interest. Confusion. Most species learn to shape their worlds before their worlds shape them. Alan changed the display again. The storms grew darker. Lightning struck the ground. Rain flooded valleys. Floods erased entire settlements, he said. Generations disappeared overnight. There were no warnings. Only loss. Sarah stood still beside him, watching the class. Her eyes moved from face to face, checking reactions. Alan went on. Disease was worse. The display showed invisible patterns now. Lines of data flowed through human figures. Humans lived close together, Alan said. We shared food, space, air. That made us strong, but it also made us vulnerable. He paused. Illness spread faster than understanding. A student leaned forward. Did your people not isolate the sick? Alan nodded. Sometimes. When we knew how. But knowledge came slowly. Many died before we learned what was happening. The image shifted again. Graves appeared. Simple markers. Then none at all. Hunger followed disease, Alan said. Crops failed. Animals moved away. Weather changed without care for our plans. Sarah spoke quietly. At this stage, most species would request aid. Several students turned toward her. And you did not? Someone asked. Alan answered before she could. We didn't know anyone else existed. The room fell into a deeper silence. Alan let it stay that way. The display showed humans hunting, gathering, working together. Their tools were simple. Their faces tired. We survived, Alan said, because we shared what little we had. And because we remembered. Remembered what? A student asked. What hurt us? Alan replied. And what helped? Time moved forward again. Villages formed. Then towns. Then cities. Each one larger, louder, more fragile. With growth came new problems, Alan said. Waste. Conflict. Crowding. The image showed smoke rising from early industry. We learned how to build, he said. Before we learned how to balance. A student near the center raised her hand. She was smaller than most, her voice soft but clear. Why, she asked, were humans never evacuated? Alan turned toward her. Your name? Lena, she said. Alan nodded. That question appears in every class. He looked at Sarah. Sarah stepped forward slightly. Her voice was calm, practiced. Because, she said, there was no one coming to save them. The words landed heavily. Lena's eyes widened. No one? She asked. No one, Sarah repeated. Alan continued gently. For most of our history, humans believed they were alone. The universe was silent. The display showed early star charts. Crude, hopeful. We looked up, Alan said, and wondered. But wondering does not rescue you. The room was completely still now. If Earth failed, Alan said, we failed with it. A student spoke quietly. Why did you stay? Alan thought for a moment. Because it was home, he said. And because leaving was not an option. The display shifted to show wars. Not graphic. Just lines moving across maps. When resources became scarce, Alan said, humans fought. Sarah watched closely, ready to stop him if needed. We fought each other, Alan said. Not because we wanted destruction but because we feared loss. The maps faded. War slowed us, he said. But it also forced us to learn coordination, medicine, communication. A student frowned. That seems backward. Alan nodded. It is. The display changed again. Scientists worked in small rooms. Doctors treated patients with limited tools. Even in the worst times, Alan said, some humans focused on healing. The image paused on a doctor holding a child. We saved who we could, he said. And we carried the memory of those we couldn't. Sarah glanced at her readings. Stress levels were rising but still within limits. Alan softened his tone. This is important, he said. Human history is not a story of constant suffering. The display brightened slightly. Art appeared. Music. Writing. Even when life was hard, Alan said, we laughed. We told stories. We made meaning. Lena raised her hand again. Did that help? She asked. Alan smiled gently. Yes, he said. More than food sometimes. The image showed humans gathering around fires, sharing meals. Hope, Alan said, is a survival tool. The room seemed to breathe again. But hope alone was not enough, he continued. Earth kept testing us. The display showed a massive storm. Then a long drought. We lost cities, Alan said. We lost knowledge. We rebuilt. A student whispered, again and again. Alan heard it. Yes, he said. Again and again. Sarah stepped closer. This is where some species struggle, she told the class. The repetition. Alan nodded. We failed in similar ways, he said. But each time we remembered a little more. The display showed early machines. Simple engines. We learned to predict storms, Alan said. Not stop them. Predict them. That mattered. We learned to store food, he said. Not create abundance. Store enough. That mattered too. Lena looked thoughtful. So you survived by preparing for loss, she said. Alan considered that. Yes, he said. And by accepting that safety was temporary. The room remained quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Focused. Heavy. Sarah spoke again. This is why evacuation is the wrong question, she said. Humans were not waiting for rescue. Alan nodded. We were learning to rescue ourselves. The display shifted to a final image for the session. Earth at night, lights scattered across the surface. By the time we could leave, Alan said, Earth had already shaped us. The bell tone sounded softly. No one moved. Lena looked up at the display. If no one was coming, she asked, how did you keep going? Alan answered honestly. Because stopping meant ending, he said. And humans are very bad at stopping. A few students let out quiet, uncertain sounds. Sarah checked her readings again. Then she nodded once. That is enough for today, she said. The doors unlocked. Still, the room stayed silent for a moment longer. Part 2 always ended like this. Alan did not rush into the next section. He waited until the doors sealed again and the room settled into a careful quiet. The students returned to their seats more slowly this time. No one joked. No one looked bored. The display above brightened and time began to move. Years passed. Then decades. Then centuries. Cities grew larger. Machines became faster. Mistakes became bigger. Alan stood with his hands relaxed at his sides. Human progress, he said, is often mistaken for smooth improvement. The image showed a tall city rising near a coastline. Data appeared beside it: population growth, trade, energy use. For a moment, Alan said, everything looks successful. The water level rose. The city flooded. Several students reacted at once. Some leaned back. Others tightened their posture. That city took hundreds of years to build, Alan said. It failed in days. The display did not soften the loss. It simply moved on. Humans rebuilt, Alan continued. Sometimes in the same place. Sometimes not. The image showed people clearing ruins, marking new foundations. Why return? A student asked. Alan answered calmly. Because we believed we could do better next time. Time accelerated again. New systems appeared: governments, trade networks, education. They worked for a while. Then they failed. Economic collapse. Resource shortages. Social unrest. Not shown in detail, only patterns and numbers falling apart. Alan spoke over it. We trusted systems before we understood them. The display paused. And when they failed, Alan said, we blamed each other. Sarah watched the room closely. A few students showed rising stress markers, but none asked to leave. The display resumed. New ideas formed. Old ones were corrected. Some mistakes repeated. A student near the front leaned forward. His name tag translated as Tom. Tom studied the patterns carefully. It keeps happening, he said. Alan turned toward him. Yes. You fail, Tom said slowly. But each failure looks different. Alan nodded. Tom continued, the damage increases, but so does the response. The room grew attentive. It's like, Tom said, searching for the right words, humans fall harder, but stand up faster. Alan allowed himself a small smile. That's one way to describe it. Tom looked uncomfortable. You learn fastest when things go wrong. Alan nodded once. They call it experience. The word echoed more than expected. Several students shifted in their seats. Sarah stepped slightly closer to Alan. Careful, she murmured. Alan lowered his voice. Experience, he said, is knowledge earned under pressure. The display showed early machines failing, bridges collapsing, aircraft crashing. These mistakes cost lives, Alan said. We did not ignore that. The image changed to engineers writing notes, adjusting designs. We remembered, Alan said. Pain makes memory stronger. A student raised a hand. Why not avoid the risk? Alan answered honestly. Because progress required risk. That seems inefficient, the student replied. Alan nodded. It was. The display showed medical advances next. Failed treatments. Wrong theories. Disease taught us humility, Alan said. Every cure came from many errors. Sarah spoke softly. Some species halted research after initial failure. Alan nodded. Humans rarely did. Why? Tom asked. Alan looked at him. Because stopping did not remove the problem. The room absorbed that. Time passed faster now. Humans reached industrial power. Pollution spread. Climate shifted. We solved one problem, Alan said, and created another. The display showed protests. Then reforms. Then partial success. Humans argued constantly, Alan said. But arguing meant we were still engaged. A student frowned. Your people disagreed openly? Yes, Alan said. Often loudly. That should have destroyed unity, the student said. Alan shook his head. It tested it. The display moved into global conflict again, but briefly. War, Alan said, was our greatest failure. Sarah's posture tightened. But even then, Alan said, we learned coordination, logistics, and the cost of unchecked fear. The display showed post-war rebuilding. Each collapse, Alan said, forced us to ask better questions. Tom raised his hand again. Is that why your technology advanced so quickly later? Alan nodded. Pressure compresses learning. Several students shifted again. This idea did not sit well. Most species, Sarah added, optimize for stability. Alan continued. Humans optimized for recovery. The display showed early computers. They failed often. We did not make perfect machines, Alan said. We made ones that could be fixed. The image showed networks forming. Data sharing. Collaboration. We shared our mistakes, Alan said. Publicly. A student tilted their head. Why admit failure? Alan answered simply. Because hiding it doesn't remove it. The room remained quiet. Time accelerated again. Humans reached space. Early rockets exploded. Failures were visible, Alan said. Embarrassing. The display showed teams returning to work. Still, Alan said, we tried again. Tom spoke quietly. You didn't wait until success was guaranteed. Alan shook his head. Guarantees came later. Sarah checked her readings again. Unease was rising, but so was focus. The display slowed as humans established long-term plans. Climate models improved. Early warnings saved lives. We learned patterns, Alan said. Slowly. The display showed disaster response improving. Each failure, Alan said, left behind a lesson. Tom leaned back slightly. So humans don't avoid mistakes, he said. They collect them. Alan smiled. That's accurate. A student near the back spoke nervously. That means your species is dangerous. Alan did not argue. Yes, he said. And useful. The display showed cooperation between nations. Then failures. Then cooperation again. We are not proud of every step, Alan said. But we do not forget them. Sarah added, that memory changes behavior. The display showed humans adapting faster than models predicted. This, Alan said, is why some species find human history disturbing. The image faded slightly. It suggests, Alan said, that comfort slows growth. The room stayed silent. Tom looked down at his slate. If failure teaches so well, he asked, why don't humans seek it? Alan answered carefully. We don't seek it, he said. But we don't run from it either. The display showed modern systems designed with backups, redundancies, and warnings. We plan for things to go wrong, Alan said. Because they always do. Sarah nodded. This mindset has spread since humans joined the wider galaxy. A few students exchanged uneasy looks. The display paused on a simple line of text. Failure is not the end. Alan let it remain. When humans fall, he said, we look at the ground, take notes, and stand up. The bell tone sounded again. No one reacted immediately. Several students looked unsettled, not afraid, but thoughtful. Tom finally spoke. That explains why you keep improving, he said. Alan nodded. Yes. And why teaching this is restricted, Tom added. Alan met his eyes. Exactly. The doors unlocked. The students stood slowly, quietly. Part 3 always left them uneasy, but thinking. The room felt different when the lesson continued. Alan could sense it even before the display changed. The students were no longer just listening. They were measuring, comparing, trying to place humans somewhere that still made sense to them. The image above shifted from Earth to space. Not the clean, glowing spaceports the students were used to. This space was dark, empty, and quiet. Small metal objects drifted around a fragile blue planet. When humans first reached space, Alan said, we were late. The display showed a timeline. Other species appeared first, their markers smooth and confident. Humanity's marker appeared much later, blinking uncertainly. We were behind in technology, Alan continued. Behind in energy control. Behind in understanding. A student raised a hand. Then why attempt it at all? Alan answered without hesitation. Because staying still felt worse. The image zoomed in on an early human rocket. It looked crude compared to modern standards. Thin walls. Limited systems. Many unknowns. This machine, Alan said, was built with more hope than certainty. The rocket launched. It shook violently. Several systems failed. It still reached orbit. The room reacted softly. We didn't know everything, Alan said. We knew just enough. Sarah folded her arms loosely. She had heard this part many times, but she still watched the class carefully. Most species, Alan said, wait until risk is near zero. The display showed advanced alien vessels, built only after full simulations and certainty. Humans, Alan said, lowered the risk until it felt survivable. A student frowned. That difference is small. Alan shook his head. It is not. The display showed early space accidents. Ships lost. Crews stranded. We failed, Alan said. Often. Tom leaned forward. Why continue? Alan looked at him. Because failure in space did not feel different from failure on Earth. That answer unsettled several students. The display showed humans fixing problems mid-mission. Rewriting plans. Adapting tools for uses they were never designed for. We made decisions far from safety, Alan said. With limited time. Sarah spoke softly. This behavior concerned early observers. Alan nodded. They called us reckless. The display showed first contact reports. Alien analysts watching human ships with alarm. Humans flew without full maps, Alan said. without full knowledge. A student asked quietly, "Did you not fear the unknown?" Alan smiled faintly. "We feared it," he said. But curiosity was louder. The display showed humans stepping onto other worlds. Not conquering, measuring, recording. "We didn't arrive as masters," Alan said. "We arrived as students." The image showed humans making mistakes, misjudging gravity, atmosphere, terrain. "We learned fast," Alan said. "Because mistakes in space are unforgiving." Sarah glanced at her wrist. Stress levels were rising again. The display showed human ships being upgraded mid-journey. Parts replaced. Systems improved while still in use. "You did not return home to redesign," a student said. "No," Alan replied. "We redesigned while moving." That caused a ripple of discomfort. "For many species," Sarah added, "movement without readiness is unacceptable." Alan nodded. For humans, waiting felt more dangerous. The display showed early human trade routes forming. Small, unstable, flexible. "We connected slowly," Alan said. "We shared what we learned." The image showed humans exchanging data openly, even mistakes. "Why share failure?" a student asked. Alan answered simply. "So others don't repeat it." The display showed humans joining galactic meetings, clearly behind in technology but quick to ask questions. "We listened," Alan said. "We learned." "And you changed course often," Tom noted. "Yes," Alan said. "Rigid plans break." The display showed human ships retrofitted with alien tech, sometimes incorrectly, sometimes brilliantly. "We adapted borrowed tools," Alan said. "Sometimes in ways their creators never intended." Sarah cleared her throat. This behavior caused concern. Alan nodded. "It still does." The display showed human crews solving problems without waiting for orders. "We trust individuals under pressure," Alan said. "Because pressure reveals ability." A student looked uneasy. "That creates unpredictability." Alan nodded. "Yes." "And danger," the student added. "Yes," Alan said again. The display showed human rescue missions. Ships entering unstable zones without full approval. "We act first," Alan said, "and explain later." That caused visible discomfort. "Other species saw this as arrogance," Sarah said. Alan shook his head. "It wasn't arrogance. It was habit." The display showed humans surviving close calls. Narrow escapes. Improvised solutions. "We survived," Alan said. "Not because we were the best." The image paused. "But because we refused to stop adjusting." Tom spoke quietly. "You treated space the same way you treated Earth." Alan nodded. "As a problem to understand, not a wall to fear." The display showed humans falling behind again as others advanced faster. "You never caught up immediately," a student said. "No," Alan replied. "We caught up gradually." "And still moved forward," Tom added. "Yes," Alan said. The display showed human presence spreading, not in a straight line but in branching paths. "We didn't expand efficiently," Alan said. "We expanded curiously." Sarah watched the students carefully now. Some looked inspired. Others disturbed. "This is why," Sarah said, "many species found human expansion unsettling." Alan continued. "We didn't wait to be ready." The display showed a simple message from early human space doctrine. "Learn while moving." "That idea," Alan said, "goes against most galactic logic." A student whispered, "It makes you unpredictable." Alan did not deny it. "Yes," he said. "And adaptable." The display faded to show humans working alongside other species, learning, failing, fixing. "We did not replace anyone," Alan said. "We complicated things." That earned a few quiet sounds of agreement. Tom looked thoughtful. "You made the system less stable." Alan smiled faintly. "But more resilient." The display dimmed. "When humans entered space," Alan said, "we brought our habits with us." The room stayed silent. "And space," Alan added, "had to adjust." The bell tone sounded softly. No one moved right away. Several students looked unsettled, not because humans were powerful, but because they were unfinished. Sarah finally spoke. Session concluded. The doors unlocked. The students left slowly, glancing once more at the dark stars on the display. Part 4 always made them uneasy. Humans had reached space not by being ready, but by refusing to wait. The lesson did not end when the display dimmed. Sarah raised her hand slightly and the system responded at once. A soft tone sounded through the hall. The lights shifted from white to a calmer blue. The doors sealed again. Several students looked up in surprise. Alan stopped speaking. Sarah checked the small screen on her wrist. Lines and symbols moved quickly. Some glowed yellow. A few edged toward red. "We will pause here," she said calmly. The room went still. "This is not punishment," Sarah added. "It is procedure." A student near the back asked quietly, "What happened?" Sarah lifted her wrist so the class could see a simplified version of the data. "Emotional readings have spiked," she said. "Across multiple species." Alan stepped back half a step. He had seen this before. "This always happens around this point," Sarah said. "When humans enter the larger story." Tom frowned. "We are not afraid," he said. Sarah looked at him. "I know," she replied. "That is the problem." The display above changed. The stars faded. Words appeared instead. "Warning classification, human history." The room felt heavier. "Human history," Sarah said, "is not restricted because it shows violence." She paused, letting that settle. "Many species have violent pasts," she continued. "Those are studied openly." The students listened closely now. "It is not restricted because humans dominate others," she said. "They do not." Alan watched the faces around him. Confusion grew. "Human history is restricted," Sarah said, "because it inspires something more dangerous than fear." The words appeared on the display. "Hope." Several students reacted at once. Some leaned back. Others leaned forward. Alan remained silent. "Hope," Sarah said, "when applied without limits, can destabilize entire civilizations." Lena spoke softly. "Hope is considered dangerous?" Sarah nodded. "Uncontrolled hope," she said. "Yes." The display shifted again. It showed records from other species. Civilizations that had studied human history in full. "Some species," Sarah said, "saw humans endure hardship and recover." The image showed a peaceful world. "They asked themselves why they lived so carefully," Sarah continued. "Why they avoided discomfort at all costs." The peaceful world dimmed. "They began to take risks," Sarah said. "Not measured ones." The image fractured. "They abandoned stability too quickly," Sarah said. "Believing struggle would make them stronger." The world collapsed into chaos. Alan swallowed quietly. "They misunderstood the lesson," Sarah said. "Human resilience is not simple imitation." Tom looked unsettled. "They thought suffering was required." "Yes," Sarah replied. "And they were wrong." The display changed again. Another record. "Other species," Sarah said, "saw humans rebuild again and again." The image showed humans repairing cities. "They believed comfort was weakness," she said. "They removed safeguards." The image showed systems failing. "They forgot," Sarah said, "that humans also paid a terrible price." The room was silent. "This is why supervision exists," Sarah said. "Human history does not say, suffer to succeed." She looked around the hall. "It says, endure when suffering comes." Alan stepped forward again. "Humans did not seek pain," he said. "We responded to it." Sarah nodded. "That difference is critical." The display showed a simple scale. Comfort, balance, collapse. "Most species," Sarah said, "build their cultures on comfort." The marker hovered near the left. "It is safe," she said. "Predictable." The marker shifted slowly right. "But comfort discourages challenge," she said. "And challenge is where adaptation forms." The marker moved too far. "And too much challenge breaks systems," she said. She looked at the class. "Human history sits painfully in the middle." Lena spoke again. "So why does it affect us so strongly?" Sarah answered honestly. "Because it asks an uncomfortable question." The display changed. "What would you do without guarantees?" The question stayed there. Alan watched the students process it. "Humans lived without guarantees for most of their existence," Alan said. "That shaped us." Tom frowned. "It makes our own history feel fragile." Sarah nodded. "Yes." Several students shifted uneasily. "Human history," Sarah said, "does not threaten you with conquest." The display showed humans cooperating with others. "It threatens you with doubt," she said. Alan added quietly, "Doubt about whether comfort alone is enough." The room felt tight now. Not panicked but stretched. Sarah continued. "Some species studied humans and changed their entire social structure overnight." The display showed sudden reforms. "They removed safety nets," Sarah said. "They pushed their people into hardship, believing it would create strength." The image darkened. "It created collapse," she said. Tom spoke slowly. "They copied the surface, not the reason." Alan nodded. Exactly. Sarah lowered her wrist slightly. Human resilience, she said, is not a recipe. The display showed the word again. Hope. Hope, Sarah said, is powerful. She paused. And dangerous. Lena asked quietly, do humans still believe in it? Alan smiled faintly. Yes, he said. But we temper it. How? Lena asked. With memory, Alan replied. The display showed records of past mistakes. We remember what hope cost us, Alan said. And we plan anyway. Sarah stepped closer to him. This balance, she said, is difficult to teach. She turned back to the class. Without supervision, she said, many students reach the wrong conclusion. Tom looked down at his slate. That comfort is a lie. Sarah shook her head. No. That comfort is incomplete. The display softened. Human history, Sarah said, shows that safety is temporary. The room absorbed that. Some species, she continued, find this idea unacceptable. The display showed protests. Refusals. They stopped the course, she said. Immediately. Others continue, Alan added. And change too much, Sarah said. She looked around the hall. This is why the warning label exists, she said. Not to stop learning. But to slow it, Alan said. Sarah nodded. The emotional readings on her wrist slowly stabilized. Yellow faded back to green. The room breathed again. Ask yourselves this, Sarah said gently. Has human history made you afraid? No one answered. Or has it made you wonder, she asked, what you might survive? That question landed harder. Several students looked away. Others stared at the floor. Alan spoke quietly. That question, he said, is where danger begins. The display faded to black. We will continue, Sarah said, after processing time. The doors unlocked slowly. The students stood but no one spoke. As they left, many looked thoughtful. A few looked shaken. None looked unchanged. Sarah exhaled once the room emptied. Alan glanced at her. Readings okay? She nodded. For now. He looked back at the dark display. Part 5 always did this. Human history did not frighten them. It made them question comfort. And that was far more dangerous. The room was quiet when the students returned for the final time. It was not the heavy silence of shock anymore. It was a careful silence. A listening silence. Alan stood where he always did at the front of the hall. Sarah was beside him, her posture relaxed but alert. The emotional readings on her wrist were steady. No warnings. No spikes. The display above them remained dark for a moment longer than usual. Alan waited. Then the final slide appeared. It showed modern humanity. Not a single image but many. Humans working together with other species. Humans arguing in councils. Humans repairing ships, planting food on harsh worlds, building homes where none had existed before. Some images showed success. Others showed failure. All of them showed motion. This, Alan said quietly, is who we are now. The students leaned forward. We are not perfect, Alan continued. We still argue. We still fail. We still make mistakes. The display showed protests, debates, repairs. We break things, Alan said. Sometimes by accident. Sometimes by pride. A few students nodded. That part at least was familiar. But, Alan said, we are curious. The display shifted to explorers, researchers, artists, engineers. Humans asking questions. Humans testing ideas. We ask questions even when the answers scare us, Alan said. Especially then. The images changed again. Rescue missions. Cooperation. Shared projects between species. And we endure, Alan said. The word lingered. The display showed humans responding to disaster. Not heroically. Not perfectly. But persistently. We bend, Alan said. We adapt. We repair. Sarah watched the students closely. No one looked overwhelmed now. They looked settled. This is modern humanity, Alan said. Imperfect. Curious. He paused. Unbreakable does not mean unbeatable, he added. It means we keep going. Tom raised his hand. Alan nodded. Go ahead. You said earlier that humans are dangerous, Tom said. Do you still believe that? Alan considered the question. Yes, he said. But not in the way many assume. The display showed a simple symbol. A line that bent but did not snap. We are dangerous, Alan said, because we do not stop when conditions are difficult. Lena spoke softly. Other species stop to protect themselves. Alan nodded. and that is often wise. The display showed stable civilizations, preserved and unchanged. But humans, Alan said, are shaped by change. The image shifted. Human cities evolving. Cultures mixing. Ideas spreading. We do not protect systems just because they exist, Alan said. We question them. Sarah stepped forward slightly. This is where misunderstanding begins, she said. The students turned toward her. Many species hear this, Sarah said, and think humans reject stability. She shook her head. That is incorrect. Alan continued. We value stability, he said. We just don't trust it to last. The display showed backup systems, redundancies, emergency planning. We plan for failure, Alan said. Not because we expect disaster. But because we remember it, Lena said. Alan smiled. Exactly. The room felt lighter now. The tension had changed into understanding. This, Alan said, is why supervision is required. He reached toward the console in front of him. His hand hovered there. Without context, he said, human history looks like a challenge. The display briefly replayed earlier images. Survival. Recovery. Adaptation. Some see it as an invitation, Alan said. To abandon caution. Sarah added, others see it as a judgment against comfort. Alan nodded. Both views are incomplete. He looked at the class. Human history does not say comfort is wrong, he said. It says comfort is temporary. The students absorbed that. It does not say struggle makes you strong, Alan said. It says struggle will come. The display shifted to a final comparison. Two paths. One path showed rigidity. Systems locked in place. Resistant to change. The other showed flexibility. Systems that adjusted and reformed. When struggle arrives, Alan said, only one path survives. Tom leaned back slightly. You don't worship hardship, he said. You prepare for it. Yes, Alan said. We respect it. The display showed humans teaching disaster response to other species. Sharing data. Sharing warnings. We do not want others to suffer as we did, Alan said. We want them to learn faster. Sarah nodded. This, she said, is another reason this course is supervised. A student asked quietly, because it changes how we see ourselves? Yes, Sarah replied. And how you see risk. Alan looked at the class one last time. You came here expecting a history lesson, he said. You received something else. He pressed the console. The archive began to close. Data folded inward. Images faded. The stars returned. This, Alan said, is why supervision is required. He turned to face them fully. Human history is not a guidebook, he said. It is a warning. The room remained silent. A warning, he continued, that survival is not neat. That progress is not clean, Sarah added. And that endurance has a cost, Alan said. The final slide appeared before the archive sealed completely. It showed a simple line of text. We are still here. Alan closed the archive. The lights softened. The system chimed quietly. No one spoke. The students sat there, understanding settling in slowly, deeply. They finally saw why this history could not be taught casually. Not because humans were monsters. Not because humans were heroes. But because humans proved that even fragile things could endure without permission. Sarah checked her wrist one last time. All readings were calm. She nodded. The course is complete, she said. The doors unlocked. The students stood. Some bowed their heads slightly. Others looked thoughtful. A few looked changed. As they left, no one asked questions. They had their answers. Alan remained at the front of the hall until the room was empty. He exhaled, long and quiet. Another class finished. Another reminder delivered. Humanity was not special because it was strong. It was special because it refused to stop. And now the students finally understood.